The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
We have an update on the story of the young black teenage girl who was flipped and then used as a mop by a police officer in Columbia, South Carolina, in school. Richland County Deputy Ben Fields was fired for violating agency policy when he picked up the 16-year-old girl and threw her across the classroom at Spring Valley High School. State Representative Todd Rutherford told WLTX-TV that the 16-year-old girl did suffer arm, neck, and back injuries. She is now in a cast, and she has a number of cuts and bruises. Rutherford said he weighs about 300 pounds. She's a student who's 16 years old, who now has a cast on her arm, a Band-Aid on her neck and back problems. There's something wrong here. Rutherford also told the New York Daily News that the teen recently lost her mother and is living in a foster home. The teen girl's foster mother said the girl was devastated and emotionally traumatized by all that has happened to her. Other reports are questioning whether it's true that she recently lost her mother in the sense of her mother passing away or not. Some of the details are unclear. Doesn't really matter. Clearly, we're talking about a traumatized individual. Now, for everyone saying the girl was acting out, she hit the officer and refused to leave, the officer is presumed to be a professional with skills in dealing with these situations. We're talking about a traumatized, clearly troubled 16-year-old girl who was refusing to leave the classroom. The fact that he felt he had no choice, presumably, but to act in this manner, that's the problem.
Well, one of two things happened here. Either this is just a really malicious cop, or it's someone who can't control his temper. And I think in either case, it's probably not someone who should be in this line of work.
Right, because the specifics are disturbing of the incident, the minutia, but the broader picture is even more disturbing. What are we going to achieve societally by treating a 16-year-old girl who may well have been misbehaving, who may well have injected her her past, her trauma, whatever, into this situation with a police officer inappropriately. But what are we going to achieve by a cop manhandling her and then putting her into the juvenile criminal justice system? If you're worried that her life might be poised to go in the wrong direction, you're guaranteeing it by treating school children, by treating what should be disciplinary issues in this way. You're becoming part of the problem.
It doesn't really help anybody. And I think if this were not on camera, Dave,
right,
he'd probably keep his job and things would just go on as usual.
This is a serious, institutionalized, systemic law enforcement problem. Over the last 4 decades, law enforcement has become increasingly militarized and increasingly lacking in the types of training that can de-escalate situations. And we have an increasing lack of empathy for people. And instead of making people's paths to a reasonable life easier, we're making them more difficult. And that's what we need to turn around. Let me remind you that in the 2012 presidential campaign, Mitt Romney insisted that Obamacare was not really based on Romneycare in Massachusetts. And he insisted that that type of thing is good at the state level, but bad at the federal level. And he insisted that that type of thing works at the state level, but won't work at the federal level. And now, Mitt Romney has finally admitted the obvious, that the Affordable Care Act was based on Romneycare, and what's more, that it's working well. Mitt Romney told the Boston Globe this was in an obituary for his friend Tom Stemberg, the founder of Staples, which is a company based here in Massachusetts. He said, quote, "Without Tom pushing it, I don't think we would have had Romneycare. Without Romneycare, I don't think we would have had Obamacare. So without Tom, a lot of people wouldn't have health insurance." That's right, Lewis. A lot of people have health insurance because of Obamacare, which we have because of Romneycare, full stop. A little different than what he was saying during the 2012 campaign, isn't it?
It does sound a little bit different. I guess maybe he doesn't want to get into the minutia of it. Of course, during the debates, he said, look, this works at the state level. It doesn't work at the national level.
Right.
Here he's saying many people have health insurance because of this. Is he just talking about Massachusetts? Doesn't sound like it.
Well, he went on Facebook then to try to walk it back, and he says he still opposes Obamacare. He said, quote, Getting people on health insurance is a good thing. And that's what Tom Stemberg fought for. I oppose Obamacare and believe it has failed. It drove up premiums, took insurance away from people who were promised otherwise, and usurped state programs. As I said in the campaign, I'd repeal it and replace it with state-crafted plans. Now we just need to get Mitt Romney to admit he was against Romneycare, or at least parts of it. Mitt Romney tried to veto multiple sections of Romneycare, Massachusetts's equivalent to Obamacare, and it was signed into law in spite of his opposition. So Obamacare worked because Romneycare worked because Romneycare existed in spite of Mitt Romney trying to get big parts of it vetoed.
Yeah, it's a little bit messy. And now it's saying like Romney makes it sound like you can just go state by state, and he wants to put something similar to Romneycare in every state.
Yeah, the problem is a lot of those Republican governors don't do it. They won't do it.
No, they won't do it. And that's why you need to have it at the national level, because it ultimately is going to save us a ton of money.
It's Halloween this weekend. I was thinking, Lewis, about my sort of life's trajectory through Halloween. First, I moved to the U.S. and I had no idea what Halloween was. Then I found out about it and I would go trick-or-treating. And I think maybe I was like age 7 to, like, when did we stop trick-or-treating as trick-or-treating?
I tried to keep it going as long as possible, Dave.
Maybe 12, 13?
I was a big fan. Probably, yeah, maybe around there.
So
yeah.
7 to 12 or 13, I was doing trick-or-treating. Then I got into the idea of you go around and you're not really trick-or-treating. We got these little potato guns that fire potato pellets, and we would sort of wreak havoc amongst trick-or-treaters. And that was age, what, like 13 to 15?
Yeah, I think so.
Then around age 15, I then stopped participating altogether, but then Lewis got into buying eggs and wreaking havoc on Cabbage Night. That was the big thing for you, right?
That was a lot of fun, or at least I thought it was back then. I'm not sure how I'd feel about it now.
Then when people got driver's licenses, it was haunted hayrides, going to Halloween parties with adult costumes, etc. And then it shifted into me just shutting the light off to avoid trick-or-treaters ringing my doorbell. That's about where I am now. I'm actually going to a wedding on Halloween this year, so I won't be doing anything Halloween related at all.
I still enjoy it. It's still my favorite holiday. I'm not going to
holiday.
It's kind of like a holiday, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what you'd call it. What else would you call it?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean a party. I'm not sure.
Well, it's a day. It's a certain day. It's my favorite day, and I like to. Last 2 years, I wore corpse paint with some spiked gauntlets and the metal shirt and all of that, and that's fun.
What is corpse paint? You just paint your face as if you've died?
Not really. It's not like you'd see in a zombie movie or something like that. It's just black and white, really. Yeah, but
so like Kiss, essentially.
Except not as stupid.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, good.
Yeah. So.
And then what are the things you said you wore? Spiked what?
Gauntlets.
And what's a spiked gauntlet?
You know, it kind of goes around your wrist with the
spikes.
spikes.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I remember for a while you were wearing just like a pimp hat and walking around with a cane.
Yeah. Well, in Florida, I discovered that I got the pimp hat and the purple and all of this, and I took off the stovetop coil, and I put this fake plastic gold chain around it and put glitter all over the stovetop coil and wore it around my neck. I was kind of proud of that one. I don't know. I didn't really have a name for it, but Dave, I dig it. I dig Halloween. I like going to Halloween parties, costume parties. It's fun.
I think the last costume I wore was a sort of mobster, 1920s mobster outfit 4 years ago. And maybe there was something more recent than that. I don't really. Sometimes I would just, when I was super lazy, I had like a bag of wigs in my basement. I don't know where it came from, but I had a bag of wigs. There was like a clown wig, a long red wig, and then just a couple random wigs. I would put a wig on, sunglasses, and a hat, and then I would just wear like a suit pants and a suit top. And I don't even know what the costume was, but that's what I would do when I last minute would get roped into something.
Dave, like you even need a wig. All you need to do is mess your hair up and walk around, and you scare the hell out of every kid that you walk by. It'd be great.
All right, that's not bad. Pretty clever. So yeah, anyway, I don't know. I'll be at a wedding. I hope it's not a costume wedding because I don't have a costume for the wedding. That strikes me as unlikely. But I also thought it was unlikely that someone would have an anti-gay pizza place cater their wedding. But apparently somebody was going to do that because a pizza place that was anti-gay said they wouldn't cater a gay wedding. So I'm the last person to really evaluate what's likely to happen at a wedding. Halloween, have fun. We've got a great program today. We will go back and update some old stories. We've got a great interview for you, and we will also handle 3 really great questions from our audience at the end of today's show.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
You can support the David Pakman Show if you ever shop on Amazon.com. Go to our website, davidpakman.com/Amazon. It will redirect you to the Amazon website, and then you can just do your shopping. Just remember that whenever you shop on Amazon, davidpakman.com/Amazon, I recommend bookmarking the link and using it whenever you shop. You can also become a David Pakman Show member. Today's new member of the day is Maria Hernandez. Maria, thank you so much for being a David Pakman Show member. You can sample the great member benefits, including the world-famous bonus show, an extra show every day just for members at davidpakman.com/membership. 3 years ago this week, Republican Colin Powell endorsed President Barack Obama. Colin Powell, of course, served as Secretary of State in the Bush administration, George W. Bush, that is. He did a great job gathering support for the bungled and pointless Iraq invasion. And it wasn't just domestic support. We later learned from Colin Powell himself that he knew he was misleading the American people, that the intelligence he was using to bolster that case for the war in Iraq was not 100% accurate. And even though he still identified as a Republican post-Bush, he did throw his support behind President Obama. And a lot of right-wingers were quick to say, hey, the Republican Colin Powell is only supporting Obama because they're both black. And nothing seems to anger Republicans more than when one of their own endorses a Democrat or leaves the party, isn't it?
Yeah, they really hate that. It's like this club, this special club, and when you speak out against something they decided collectively, or you leave the club, it's the biggest sin, Dave.
And I wonder who Colin Powell will endorse in this upcoming election, if anybody. Maybe it just doesn't really matter. Maybe Colin Powell won't be looked to for an endorsement.
Well, I can't say I know Colin Powell that well, but I'd have a really hard time believing that he would put his support behind Ben Carson or Donald Trump. And so I really don't know. Maybe I'd like to see him throw his support behind Bernie, Dave. That would be fantastic.
That would be fascinating for a number of reasons, particularly because as a guy who grew up in the military world and worked in the military world until he was eventually Secretary of State, which still is a role that has a lot of overlap with the military. That in contrast to Bernie Sanders, who is widely considered a pacifist by many, although Bernie Sanders is just against pointless military invasions and actions. He said that sometimes, like in Kosovo, you do have to engage the military. There are other times where you do have to use the military. He just seems to be against pointless use of the military. That would be fascinating. Colin Powell endorsing Bernie Sanders. I think for sure, if we are going to get an endorsement from Colin Powell, it won't be until after the Democratic primary. As we've talked about before, though, Lewis, most endorsements don't matter that much.
Yeah, at this point in time, what would an endorsement from Colin Powell really mean? I don't know. Maybe it depends on how much media coverage it gets.
Yeah, and it's not just about Colin Powell. Like, we're not saying endorsements from him don't matter, but just generally, endorsements have not been shown to be that impactful. And I think that's what we will keep an eye on.
Dave, unless they are endorsements from megachurch pastors, right?
Oh, yeah, then it's huge, yeah. Which, of course, is a reason that they should be losing their tax-exempt status.
Yeah, it's basically illegal, but it still sways a lot of people.
2 years ago this week, Markwayne Mullin of Oklahoma said that unlike Hurricane Sandy survivors, the survivors of the Oklahoma tornado showed self-responsibility and thus should receive federal aid from the government. Mullin was not the only official who voted against Hurricane Sandy aid and then asked for money later. but he did have some choice words on the matter, saying the difference was self-responsibility. I don't even know what that means.
I don't either. It's not like he went to the East Coast, strolled up and down the coast, witnessed something that we all missed, right? I mean, what is he talking about? I think he just kind of needed to make something up, but he insulted millions of Americans.
And the depraved Republican hypocrisy on Sandy aid versus Midwest or center of the country tornado aid, or even other federal disasters, was such an obvious example of the depraved hypocrisy and double standards that we see year in and year out on fiscal issues, on social issues, on education issues, on religious issues. The double standard party was very much exposed with the Hurricane Sandy aid in relation to the Oklahoma tornado disaster aid. And there was no difference between the Hurricane Sandy victims and the tornado victims. Neither brought on the natural disaster themselves. All did what they thought they could best do for self-preservation. All were equally deserving of government aid to the extent that anyone is deserving of government aid. And this, such a blatant attempt from Republicans to try to draw a distinction. The difference was you didn't want the money for other states and you wanted it for your states. That was the difference.
Yes, and my advice to politicians would be, if you have your sights set on higher office, just vote yes to every disaster aid bill or package.
Because you never know when you might have to vote for your constituents.
That's exactly it.
1 year ago this week, the failed right-wing alternative to Facebook called Reagan Book returned as Freedom Book. Reagan Book totally failed, right? It got invaded by trolls. It was totally insurmountable. They had to shut the whole thing down the way Todd Aiken thinks a woman's body shuts down a rape pregnancy. Freedom Book rose from the ashes in honor of the 1 year anniversary. And Lewis created a Freedom Book account. Freedom is his name, as in Freedumb. Freedom. What are your observations, Lewis?
All right. Well, to start with, let me preface this by saying there's almost no activity on the website. It's basically
dead. Yeah.
It's completely dead at this point. And there were some blog sections, like one about Bible passages and one that said, if you need to pray for someone, do it here.
Yeah.
You know, instead of praying to God, I guess they want you to post your prayer on Freedom Book.
Yeah, because God pays more attention to prayers posted on Freedom Book than on WordPress blogs, for example. He's super discerning when it comes to that.
Yeah, God is actually an internet troll. And there's a group section that features groups like Muslim Watch, Hillary Clinton, which shows Hillary with a Hitler mustache, and Homosexual Watch. Each of these groups has about 3 people in it, Dave.
This is the best.
Yeah, and 17 days ago was the most recent activity on the website, and before that, it was about 3 months. So, Dave, I'll let you read off what the moderator wrote.
Okay.
And then I actually responded to it, and I'll tell you what happened.
All right, so FB Moderator, which I guess stands for Freedom Book Moderator. We have not forgotten about this site. We are still actively making small tweaks in the background and keeping things running well. It's easy to have it run well, Lewis, when there's no one on the site, that's for sure. Let me continue. We are also seeing some spammers trying to get in, but with the new security features, it's much more difficult. Note to members, some liberals automatically associate foul language with freedom, and denying them the use of foul language, they get bent out of shape. This is a Christian nation, and you can communicate without foul language in our house. So, Lewis, you went on and responded, right?
I responded this way. I typed, exactly. It is easy to avoid using foul language. For example, instead of SHIU, that word, you can say poop. And instead of the F word, which I typed out, you can say heck. It's really simple, you rude liberals.
And what's been the response to Freedom's post on Freedom Book?
It was immediately removed.
That is just the best. Freedom Book.
Yeah, so don't bother with Freedom Book. It is completely dead. And, I also noticed a user named Joseph Stalin. So there's definitely a bunch of trolls on there still. I mean, half of the 20 people that use it are probably trolls.
Yeah, half, and then the other half, other than you, are probably staff.
Yeah, I think so. But if you want a good laugh, make an account and go on there.
And you can find Lewis on there under the username Freedumb, D-U-M-B. Although, if anybody catches wind of your incisive report here, I have a feeling you may be banned soon.
Yeah, I don't know, Dave. Like I said, there's probably only about 10 people using that site. I don't
There
think
might
they'll
not be anyone on there to notice you're trolling.
Right, exactly.
All right. Great update on Freedom Book from Lewis. I like it. I personally liked Reagan Book better. I think that was good. But, Freedom Book has the same initials as Facebook at least. So, I don't know. That's something.
That's something. Not sure what else to say about it, Dave. It's a total failure, but I'm glad it exists.
Oh, absolutely. Because this is America, Lewis. Thank you. I'm on Twitter at dpacman. Lewis is on Twitter at lewismotamedy. And of course, the best place to discuss stories with other David Pakman Show viewers is on our Reddit discussion forum, which you can access by going to davidpakman.com/Reddit. That's REDDIT.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
This week, we're going back to just a good old-fashioned conspiratorial guest for our classic interview. November of 2009, I interviewed a man named Grant Jeffrey, who had all sorts of interesting hypotheses about how a global elite that he claims exists will be destroying democracy and taking away everybody's freedom. He also had some ideas about the end of the world, which probably won't come as a surprise to you. So this week's classic interview, this is one that, if you're at all new to the show, it goes back to 2009. Grant Jeffrey was the man's name. Let's go take a look at that. And I do warn you, this may be disturbing for many viewers, those who still have a connection to the real world.
Grant Jeffrey is recognized as one of the leading teachers on Bible prophecy and an intelligent defense of our Christian faith. He is the chairman of Frontier Research Publications Incorporated, a leading publisher of books, tapes, and videos. He's also the author of Shadow Government, How the Global Elite Plan to Destroy Democracy and Your Freedom. Thanks for calling in, Grant.
I'm glad to be with you.
So tell me what surveillance and security have to do with the Bible prophecy and how you're an expert in both. I think that's a good place to start.
Well, I think it's very clear from the prophecies of Daniel and the book of Revelation that in the future, in our generation, which I believe began with the rebirth of Israel in 1948, which is the generation which all of prophecy suggests will be the time of the rise of Antichrist, the tribulation period of 7 years of global dictatorship, and finally, thankfully, the return of Jesus Christ to establish the kingdom of God on earth, that this is the generation. And in my research on what is happening in the surveillance technologies as well as the technology that is moving us toward global government, in the book Shadow Government, as well as in the documentary, I point out that there are 3 different global government groups: the Bilderbergers, the Council of Foreign Relations, and the Trilateral Commission.
Okay, so
who are
before we get
absolutely committed to global government and the eradication of the United States sovereignty.
So if I understand correctly, to sum up, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, a lot of this problem that you see here of global surveillance and the end of the world was started by the creation of Israel in 1948.
That was the beginning from a prophetic standpoint, that generation that saw the rebirth of Israel would also, in their lifetime, see the return of Jesus Christ, including the rise of Antichrist and global government. What we have seen since 1948 and the rebirth of Israel has been the rise of global government, both in the European Union with 27 nations who have given up their total sovereignty to 500 million people now being administered by an unelected, appointed, secret government, the Executive Commission of the European Union, and we watch the various negotiations to produce a treaty between Canada, the United States, and Mexico, as well as South America, to produce a North and South American treaty, and also in Asia.
Right.
Their plan is to unite the three different groups of the world into one.
So it sounds like the Jews are a big problem in all of this, are they not?
Well, not a problem, but a pretext, because a great number of people in the world really have a very vitriolic hatred of Israel and the Jewish people.
And in your opinion, is that hatred warranted in any way?
No, it is not. I believe Israel is one of the shining lights in the world. Israel, as a nation with 6 million people, produces more patents and more inventions every year than any other nation of the 200 nations in the world except America. After America, Israel is the second largest nation in production of patents, inventions that are being shared with the world in terms of developing desalination of water, developing the most unique and most effective agricultural systems in the world.
Sure, certainly.
It's quite astonishing.
To get back to the book, and of course we're talking about the book Shadow Government, of which Grant Jeffrey is the author. You talk about a sort of, I guess I'd call it a big brother in today's society, surveillance of financial transactions, tracking internet searches, the ability to eavesdrop on emails
Indeed.
and phone calls. These are all reasonable security concerns. I don't think anybody would say they don't care about those things. But where I think we start kind of getting into the weeds and the conspiracy theories is when we address this secret global elite, as you call it in the book, that are using these technologies to control the world. Who are these global elite exactly?
Well, there are three groups called the Bilderbergers, the Council of Foreign Relations, and the Trilateral Commission. The Bilderbergers started in 1954. This was after World War II, and these groups of people, royalist as well as the most powerful and financially wealthy people in the world, decided, and not unreasonably, that as long as there were 200 nation states, and as long as there were weapons of mass destruction, inevitably, conflict between nations would result in annihilation. These individuals, with the Council of Foreign Relations and the American group, the Trilateral Commission involving Asia, Europe, and America, they concluded, and I do not believe that they're evil. I think they look at these situations and say, realistically, as long as we have independent nation states and weapons of mass destruction, knowing the history of mankind of warfare, then inevitably we will have a genocidal war. These individuals concluded that the only hope for mankind's survival was global government. What is interesting to me as a student of Bible prophecy is that the Bible suggested that in the last days, both in the prophet Daniel's book as well as in the book of Revelation, that there would in fact be global government, and that this global government would in fact take over the world, and they do not share our normal Canadian-American views of democracy.
So what will they do? And this, I don't want to get into a long in short, what will they do once they control the world, as you say?
Well, they believe that global government is the solution, both to the economic problems of globalization as well as how to eliminate global warfare. The Third World War, which would be obviously an annihilation of a great part of humanity.
So I have to say, when I hear you say this, and I think about, I don't understand, and maybe I'm not as well studied as you are on this issue. To me, when I think about this big brother or secret society that's tracking whether I look up the Celtics score or our co-producer Lewis is looking up internet porn, I don't know how that connects to this World War III global genocide. I'm just not connecting the dots.
Okay, let me share that in the book of Revelation, we're told that in the last days, during the time of the generation leading to the return of Christ, there would not only be global government, but a total surveillance society in which no one, whether they're rich or poor, free or bond, rich or poor, would have any ability to have any privacy. That unless they pledge their allegiance to this global dictator and accept a mark in their right hand or forehead, 666, they would not be able to buy or sell, work, or even live. Now, for the first time in human history, we live in a society in which the technology has now been developed. And I point out in my book, Shadow Government, as well as in the documentary, that radio frequency ID chips were introduced by the largest manufacturer of personal consumer products back in 1999, Procter & Gamble and Gillette, and they were endorsed by Walmart in 2004, that virtually every major product that is now available in our society has a radio frequency ID chip, a 96-digit number built into a device that is the size of a period at the end of your sentence, that is built into your belt, the label of your shirt, your shoes, and these radio frequency ID chips, as documented in the documentary by leading top Harvard University professors, provide the ability that when you go into an airport, a train station, bus station, or a bank, the radio frequency readers from 100 feet away can read that 96-digit number identifying that belt or shoes or your shirt, but also because when you walk through the cash register and bought that with your debit or credit card, your identity is now connected with that RFID chip.
I understand.
There's been no discussion in Parliament of Canada, Britain, or the U.S. Congress of this technology and its implications for total population surveillance.
In the last minute or so we have left here, I assume in listening, if you're this concerned and have these grave predictions as a result of the surveillance methods, you certainly must have been completely opposed to the Patriot Act, correct?
Not at all, not in total, but there are certain features of it which are of real concern. We are facing a terrible terrorist assault on American and Canadian and other democratic freedoms.
So I hear, do you understand why some might perceive that as a little bit hypocritical, where we should be this concerned about the surveillance, except when it comes to terrorists coming to Canada and the U.S. from the Middle East? It sounds a little bit hypocritical, does it not?
Not at all. It's nuanced. It's saying that the introduction, without discussion in Parliament or Congress, of a surveillance society in which every bit of the identification of every single citizen is now compromised by the fact that we have products in our clothing which contain radio frequency ID chips which identify us from a distance of 100 feet, is something that has never been discussed by Congress.
I got it. I understand that part.
Or even known by the average American. I think that should be of concern to Americans and Canadians who love freedom.
So, Grant, how long do we have left before the end of the world?
Well, the Bible does not even talk about the end of the world. It talks about a crisis in which Jesus Christ will come, and he will ultimately destroy evil. And I believe the prophecies suggest it will be in our generation. I do not believe in doom and gloom prophecy at all.
I hope not.
I'm looking at the most positive message that if this is the generation spoken of by Daniel and Revelation and other prophecies in the Bible, that in our lifetime we're going to see first the rise of Antichrist, global dictatorship, but within 7 years the eradication of that and the establishment of justice, righteousness, freedom, as well as provision of prosperity that mankind has longed for thousands.
It's a lot to look forward to. And just a quick yes or no, you don't think that Barack Obama could possibly be that Antichrist, do you?
Absolutely not.
Okay, good. All right, we can agree on that. Well, we've been speaking with Grant Jeffrey, author of Shadow Government. Thank you so much for calling in today.
God bless.
Thank you.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Time to answer your questions. It's Friday afternoon. It's the end of the show. Call them in via voicemail, 219-2DavidP. Email us through our website. Leave them as tweets. Post to our Facebook page. Talk about them on our Reddit discussion forum. Whatever. If the question warrants an answer, then it will get one, Lewis. And today's first question is from Heather from Mount Vernon. Heather says, my spouse is saying Bernie can't win because he's Jewish, and this country is too anti-Semitic to elect a Jew as president. I think he's wrong, but I fear he's right. Is he right? And how should I respond? I have mentioned this before, and I'm glad that Heather is bringing it up. When I step back from it, it's very easy to get wrapped up in the micro. Oh, Bernie's doing well in New Hampshire and Iowa, but in South Carolina and Nevada, he's not doing so well. But nationally, he does better against some of the Republican candidates than Hillary Clinton does. When I step back, I don't see the country electing a Jew in 2016. I hope that I'm wrong. Obviously, I hope that I'm wrong, Lewis, but I do think that as the name awareness of Bernie Sanders increases, the concerns from anti-Semites about his Judaism will rise. And if you looked during the first Democratic debate, Bernie garnered some of the most significant internet traffic, people searching stuff about Bernie more than about any of the other Democratic candidates. I think two of the top 5 things people were Googling were about Bernie Sanders being Jewish and about Bernie Sanders' religion. So I think it is going to be a factor. I hope it's not the factor that will prevent him from being president or being the nominee. But yeah, anti-Semitism is one of the most accepted forms of bigotry in the United States right now.
Yeah, sadly, Heather, your spouse, might be correct. And on top of that, I think Bernie Sanders is really more like us. While we identify as being culturally Jewish, he's clearly not a religious guy.
And he was actually, I think we might have the clip. We played the clip at some point of he was on the Jimmy Kimmel show, and he was asked whether he believes in God, and he gave an answer that sort of makes it pretty clear that he doesn't. I mean, in terms of religion, it doesn't really seem like Bernie Sanders is Jewish religiously, but clearly a Brooklyn Jew, a cultural Jew, obviously, and that in and of itself is already a problem for many bigots in this country.
Yeah, and I think you'd probably agree with me when I say this, but if Bernie was wearing a yarmulke on that stage,
oh God, he has no chance, Lewis.
He'd have no chance at all.
No chance whatsoever. I mean, it was a problem enough for Al Gore that he had Joe Lieberman as his vice president. Aside from Joe Lieberman's disastrous politics, most of which actually surfaced after his 2000 candidacy with Al Gore. But putting that aside for a second, yeah, if Bernie Sanders was more religious and if he wore a yarmulke, I mean, forget about it, Lewis. No chance of being president at this point in the United States. Good question from Heather. I would respond to your spouse by saying, you may well be onto something, although I hope that it's not true. Will wrote to me. Will said, have you ever thought of doing any other kind of voice work? Like, for example, narration or being a sports announcer? Yeah, I would love to do some narration. I would love it if someone came to me and said, hey, we're doing this documentary. We'd like to hire you to narrate the documentary. Ideally, Lewis, it would be about a political issue I agree with rather than, a pro-gun documentary. That I'm not interested in voicing over. I actually think it would be super fun to sit in for a few minutes with one of the New England sports broadcast teams. That really does seem like it would be a great time. I don't see that happening anytime soon, but hey, you never know who listens to our show, Lewis. If you are part of any of the broadcast teams for the Celtics, Red Sox, Patriots, or Bruins, by all means, I'm available. I'm just saying, Lewis.
Dave's very subtle, Dave. Yes, very good. I've never really thought about doing this. I don't know. Maybe I don't like the sound of my own voice, but I just never really thought about it. I think this would be something that you should try to do if someone offers, to have you join.
Our friend Sam Cedar from the Majority Report is the voice of the health inspector on Bob's Burgers, which is a funny cartoon. That would be hilarious too. I would love to voice over some character in a cartoon. That would be, I mean, it all seems like a great time. And I know when you get in there and you have to repeat the same line a million times, it could be a little taxing. It could be a little cloying, for lack of a better term. But it still seems like it would just be great fun to do it.
Yeah, I think that for me, that might be a bit more fun than the sports thing or any other type of voice work. Doing a funny cartoon or something like that, I think I might enjoy that.
If you had to do a character, Lewis, who's like a sort of zany teenager, right? Like, what would be your zany teenager cartoon voice?
Hard to say, Dave. Would I be given complete creative control? I mean,
Absolutely, yeah. Just whatever you think would be the best zany teenager cartoon voice that you could do.
I don't think I would do the zany teenager. That just wouldn't be the voice that they want to attach me to, Dave.
Okay, well, let me give you a different one and see if we can get a sample from you. If you were Satan in a cartoon, what would be your Satan cartoon voice?
I might try to just lower my voice a little bit, but sound exactly the same.
All right, what would that sound like, though?
Just a little bit lower. Maybe like this. I don't know, Dave. I mean, Satan could run the whole spectrum. You could have a completely zany, high-pitched, crazy, wiry Satan. You could have the deep, dark, evil.
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right, well, we were able to successfully get Lewis to give us 2 seconds of something. That was pretty good. I like that. So yeah, anyway, I'm available. It's very easy to get a hold of me. Just, tell me where to go. I'll show up and I'll record whatever you want. As long as it's not crazy political stuff that I don't agree with. Last question today is from Kelly. Kelly says, after you do a show, do you usually come away thinking it was a good show? Like, job well done, David? Not really. I find that I am very, very much my harshest critic. Aside from all of the anti-Semitic lunatics that email me every single day, other than those thousands of emails that I get every day, I find that I'm my own harshest critic when it comes to the show. Every once in a while, though, Lewis, I will go back and listen to a few minutes of the show, or maybe if I'm running and all of my podcast playlists end, I'll say, hey, I'm going to check out what today's show sounds like from a listener's perspective. Sometimes I will say, there's some pretty good stuff in there. That really wasn't a bad show.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe way back in the day when we were in the same space, occasionally you might say to each other, well, that went well.
But I almost feel like it became a joke where I would say, great show, and it was kind of like we said it every day.
Yeah, but I think if there's anything that we kind of analyze and go over in our head right after it happens, it's probably an interview. And we'll say, oh, that interview went really well, or that interview was a bit slower.
Right.
Maybe it wasn't so great, that type of thing.
Yeah, no, but so the long and short of it is, broad strokes, I think the show is way better today than it was a year and a half ago and 3 years ago and 5 years ago, etc. Broadly speaking, when I do a specific segment or a specific show, it's pretty rare that I actually come out of it and say, we were on top of it there, Lewis. I mean, that was just great. Like, I recognize broadly that the show has to be okay if we keep growing in the way that we have, but it's pretty rare that I say, this was just spot on.
But pretty soon we're going to have to think about things a little bit differently, right? Because we move into the new studio, we have all this new equipment,
right.
We have a new process for filming the show. And
my opinion of the show is going to be going way down in the next 3 to 4 months as we start to restructure how we do it. It may not actually get any worse, but my opinion of it is definitely destined to be sort of as low as Carly Fiorina's poll ratings, to take a page from current events. Yeah, I'm bracing for that.
Yes, so we'll have to be looking at the footage and listening to ourselves and analyzing the show as a whole, and I hope it gets better. And
then analyzing the analysis to see if there may have been bias in how we analyzed,
Yeah, and then getting a meta-analysis from all the listeners and viewers and all of that.
Oh, it's going to get super meta. That's no question about that. Okay, we have a terrific bonus show for you today. That sadly, or thrillingly to some, is the conclusion of this week of programs, unless you are a David Pakman Show member, in which case you have the members-only show to look forward to. Sign up and get instant access to all of that at davidpakman.com/membership.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.